All right, today we're diving into something huge, the massive rush of artificial intelligence into the public sector. But, behind all the promises of efficiency and optimization, there's a real legitimacy crisis brewing. Let's break it all down.
So governments all over the world are pouring billions into AI, right? They're all chasing that dream of speed and efficiency. But in this gold rush, you have to ask, are they actually ready for what they're building?
Let's start with just the demand side of things, because the pressure to adopt AI is absolutely enormous. In the US, a staggering 90% of federal agencies are either already using it or have plans to. I mean, that's nearly universal ambition right there.
Okay, but here's the reality check. Of all those agencies, how many do you think have actually completed their AI adoption plans? In the civilian sector, it's only 12%. That is a massive gap between the ambition to use AI and the institutional readiness to actually govern it.
And then you've got the public. As of last year, a full 50% of U.S. residents say they are uncomfortable with their government using AI. And that number is actually trending up. So just think about that recipe. Huge internal demand, incredibly low readiness, and declining public trust.
The source material for this explainer actually has a great name for this whole situation: the Great AI Squeeze. It's this immense pressure from the top to invest and deploy, and it's colliding head-on with the reality of lagging capacity and public skepticism from below.
And when we talk about pressure, we are talking about serious money. This is not some small experiment. We're looking at global spending that's projected to hit over $2 trillion, with billions coming from the U.S. federal government alone. I mean, that kind of cash flow creates a huge, huge pressure to show results and to show them fast.
But here's the absolute core argument of this analysis. For a government, deploying AI isn't just an efficiency problem, which is kind of what it is for a private company. No, for the public sector, it's fundamentally a question of legitimacy.
The stakes are just fundamentally different. For a private company, being able to explain how an AI works is, a nice to have. But for a government, it's mandatory, because we, the citizens, have to be able to contest decisions. When a company's AI fails, it hurts revenue. When a government's AI fails, it can directly harm people and completely destroy political trust.
So when an AI makes a mistake in the public sector, it's not just a bug. This quote puts it perfectly. An error is politically and socially costly. A bad Netflix recommendation is just an annoyance, but a mistaken denial of welfare benefits? That can be a life-altering event that erodes faith in the entire system.
And this whole problem gets even worse because AI isn't being rolled out into a vacuum. It's being layered right on top of societies that already have these deep, pre-existing inequalities.
And this number frames that reality perfectly. 8.4 to 1. That's the average income gap between the richest and poorest 10% in developed countries. This is the terrain. This is the landscape where these powerful new systems are being built.
So when you introduce powerful automation into a context like that, the source identifies three major risks. First, you've got a digital access gap, where AI-powered services could end up excluding the very people who need them the most. Second, there's the automation of gatekeeping, where algorithms making decisions about benefits or policing can just amplify existing biases. And third, you have workforce displacement that's going to hit those entry-level roles the hardest.
And this all leads to the central challenge for any public sector leader. Is your AI strategy actively trying to reduce that 8.4 to 1 gap? Or is it just taking that existing inequality and making it more efficient, locking it in with decisions that are faster and much, much harder for a citizen to appeal?
So if the stakes are this high, why is it so darn hard to get right? Well, this analysis points to two critical institutional weaknesses. First, how governments buy technology, and second, the skills of the people who actually have to manage it. So the analysis argues that most public sector AI failures actually begin right here, in the procurement contract, long before a single line of code is run. If the requirements are vague, well, the vendor gets to define success. If there are no clauses for performance or auditing, the government is essentially flying completely blind. And the people problem is just as stark. You've got a workforce that is eager, and they're experimenting. Over 60% of public servants have tried AI, but at the same time, only 35% have received any official guidance on how to use it safely and effectively. That is a massive guidance gap. And if we dig a little deeper, it's not just a general training issue.
There are three really critical capability gaps. You have frontline caseworkers who need to know when to trust an AI recommendation and, just as important, when to override it. You have procurement teams that need the technical skills to write smart contracts, and internal auditors need to know how to actually test a model for bias. These are very specific, and they're largely missing skill sets.
Okay, so that is a lot of challenges. The pressure, the legitimacy crisis, the institutional gaps. So what's the path forward here? Well, the source proposes a really clear practical mantra: build capacity before you grant autonomy.
Let's just compare the two approaches, right? You've got the rushed rollout, which gets you a quick headline, sure, but it often leads to backlash, lawsuits, and really expensive reversals. Then you have the credibility-first approach. Yeah, it's slower to start, but it builds stable support and leads to better, more durable adoption. Over the long haul, it's actually the more fiscally and politically sound strategy.
So how do you actually do credibility first? Well, it's a sequence, and the order here is everything. Step 1. Classify your decisions by risk. Step 2. Start by augmenting low-risk tasks. Don't just jump to fully autonomous decisions. 3. Institutionalize your governance. Build the review boards, the audit functions. And only then, once that foundation is really solid, do you expand AI's autonomy into those higher-risk areas.
Ultimately, this entire challenge, this whole thing, it boils down to one core concept: state capacity. This isn't about having the fanciest algorithm. It's about an institution's fundamental ability to procure, govern, and deploy technology in a way that actually earns citizen trust.
So let's just summarize that central conflict. You've got all this pressure to deploy, and it's smashing up against the reality of institutional capacity. The gap between those two forces, well, that's where public trust, that's where legitimacy is either built or spent. And right now, it's being spent way, way too quickly.
And that brings us to the final, really powerful takeaway from this analysis. In the private sector, the mantra might be move fast and break things. But in government, the speed of deployment can only ever be as fast as the speed of accountability. And according to this source, that's not a bug. That is a feature.